Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
Hello, everybody. This is RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at CriticalBlast.com. And tonight we are going to get into yet another crowdfunded comic book. Actually, I might overspeak. I don't know that this one's being crowdfunded. This is a departure for us because we normally do talk on all the crowdfunded people. This is going to be an independent book called Dominion. And with us today, we have Dr. Bell, the writer of that, or the co-writer of that. And I'm adding him to the stream now. And I'm doing that while I'm on an old computer, so I'm hitting the add to the screen. It's just a little slow. Dr. Bell, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to see you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, we're glad to have you. Now, you told me before the show started, but for the sake of all the people who are going to come see the video, could you tell us again your credentials, what kind of doctor you are, sir?
Yeah, I am a professor of art and design at Liberty University and at George Fox University. I also developed a master's level comic book publishing course for Liberty University.
A comic book publishing course. Now that is something that I would like to sign up for because my experience in publishing comic books is completely limited. I'm going to do that a lot to you, by the way.
It's okay. No, it's quite all right. That's real.
Completely limited to these two Bibles.
Yeah, those are two of the books that I use for my textbooks. And of course, Scott McCloud is amazing. So yeah, absolutely.
He definitely he helped me out with, not personally, but through the books, with some of my Toastmasters speeches, trying to communicate how the mind processes images and how we extend ourselves into things. The whole thing about where he talks about you hit me when one car hits another car was just fascinating to me about, how we would extend ourselves into the objects we carry.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's so much psychology behind comics, not just how you read them, but how they're displayed. If you look at Eastern culture and Western culture, it's two different mindsets as far as how you actually display comic panels on a page and how you actually read it. So there is, there's a science behind it. Now,
boy, knowing now what you teach, I could keep you on here for about 3 hours. But especially since you just compared Eastern and Western and talked about the panel layout. Obviously, comparing a Western comic book to a manga, the obvious thing is that they're read backwards. But is there more to the way that they lay out their panels, a different dynamism than what you see in?
Well, I mean, what you mentioned is exactly the case. It really is, how do you read a comic book, And so in Western culture, we're reading left to right down, left to right down, left to right down. In Eastern culture, you're reading right to left down, right to left down, right to left down. And so it's just a different mindset. The first time I read a manga, I was like, well, how do I read this? You know what I'm saying? And so you have to kind of like rewire your brain to follow the flow of the narrative. Sometimes I had to go back several times, like reading Attack on Titan or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, what just happened? And it's like reading, it's like going backwards in time in a way. Kind of like that new Tenet film. I think that's that's what they're playing around with.
I want to see that.
Yeah, I'm going to see that.
Well, that's the thing that I do love about comic books, though, is that you do have to wire your brain special to read them because it's a medium that is unlike any other. It's not like a novel, and it's not like a movie. You actually have the words and the pictures, which means you have to use both sides of your brain at the same time to build the story up. And no other medium engages you in that fashion and makes you think that way.
Well, see, that's exactly what McCloud was talking about in understanding comics. Comics is the medium that allows you to control how you experience this narrative. It's not like, watching a movie where, you're going along the pace with the director. no, you kind of take the place of the director in the comic, in the pacing of how you read it, and how you intake it. It's like, that's why I really love when, a comic book can, take advantage of not even having words on a page to communicate the narrative, because then it's completely interpretive. It's completely subjective, to where you're saying, wow, in this whole fight sequence, Daredevil, literally there's no words being spoken on the page. And I'm just taking this from a Daredevil page that I saw, which had no words in it from beginning to end. There was no words in the comic. And it's like it's a different kind of experience. If you're not a comic book fan, you won't really understand the depths that comic narratives take you, in telling a story.
Absolutely. Now, in your classes, as you the students that come to your classes, do you find that the majority of them want to do a particular kind of comic book on their own, or are they sort of all over the place as far as genre and style and storytelling?
You know what, man? You get all sorts of people, because when you get to my class, you are at a master's level in education, and so you kind of know what you want to do. In a lot of ways, you will have students. I think I have very few students at that level who want to tell superhero stories, who want to tell flights and tights. A lot of the times, they're telling slice of life stories. They're telling some type of biblical truth, because I teach at Liberty. It's a Christian school, so you're talking like infusing some type of biblical truth within a slice of life narrative. So that could either be like faith, it could be showing love in maybe an extraordinary circumstance, it could be acceptance, it could be understanding, it could be all sorts of different ways to communicate those type of biblical truth, but within the aspect of a slice of life comic. I've had a student who they take opportunities to tell historical narrative. One student recently, a couple semesters back, she told a fantastic story about that I didn't even know. I'm like, really? How do I not know this? And I'm a history buff, but the women who actually cross-dressed in the Civil War in order to fight, fight for their family, fight for their home. They actually dressed up as a Union soldier, as a Confederate soldiers. They happen on both sides, and they would go out and fight. And unfortunately, when they get hit with a musket ball, they get found out, because they have to have that very hard conversation with the doctor, and sometimes they get outed, sometimes they don't. So
it's sort of like Mulan, but in the Civil War.
Exactly. It was a very well written story. Maybe one of these days I'll try to help her get it published. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, speaking of getting published, you have your own work, which was, of course, the reason why I wanted to invite you on to talk about Dominion. And I'm very, very taken with the line style of the characters here. I mean, I've seen anthropomorphism before, and it's up and down the scale as to how good it is or how not it is. And yours is a very believable physique while still being this animal structure here. It's not it's not Thundercats roar or anything.
Yeah.
And it's well above the classic Bugs Bunny kind of thing. It's not a funny animal. It's a serious. They look like warriors. They don't look like they're gonna throw a pie at you or something. Do you do your own artwork, or do you contract with an artwork?
No, man, it's all me, honestly. From the adaptation of the narrative to the pencil work, that's all me. I have. Thank you so much. I brought in an inker and a colorist to help kind of enhance what I already bring to the table. And I have a co-writer that we recently brought on board to kind of, I'm a big picture kind of storyteller, and I always need a surgeon to come in to really kind of splice together the connections of the characterization. And so that's what my co-writer Daniel Hancock, he actually hopefully he'll call in. We'll see if he does or not. But he really is a blessing to help be able to tie in the narrative like that. But yeah, I've always been a fan of Thundercats, of anthropomorphic storytelling, and I this has been germinating in the back of my mind for almost 20 years, and to bring it together like this, it's just Dominion is like a hodgepodge of all my nerdery that's just kind of exploding on the page. And there he is.
Hey, how's it going?
Speaking of which, there's Daniel. Daniel, I was just talking about you, man.
Oh, really? Oh,
your
no.
ears must have been burning.
Yeah,
because
I can feel it all the way here in Michigan.
Hello, little one in the background, little human.
There's all mine here. There's my other one.
Hi, little humans. So Daniel, I was just talking about how when I developed Dominion, the script, it was initially I'm a big picture person, so I know the beginning, middle, end of the narrative, but I needed someone who could help me, who could be a surgeon and help to splice together the connections between relationships of the characters, and then help them grow in their arcs.
Right.
And so that's what you have helped to bring to the table. So
yeah, it's exciting. It's been a lot of fun so far. Just kind of diving in. You got so much there. It's kind of the way I see it, it's kind of like it's under the surface. We're drawing it out. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the artwork too just really helps to inspire that in me as I look at the expressions that you're creating. I know that it's there in the character's psychology already. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of trying to bring it out, bring it to the surface. It's good stuff.
By the way, Daniel, nice beard, man.
Oh, thanks.
It seemed to have grown more since we last talked.
Yeah, I try to lawn mow, once a week or so.
we're all beard bros.
Right.
This is my beer bug beard.
Nice, I love it.
So Daniel, what's your experience in comic books that you bring to Dominion?
Well, mostly comic book movies for me, but I love the artwork and all the characters and such. So most of my experience probably goes more on the story end. I've done a lot of theater work and writing of my own productions and projects, and most recently audio drama. So working on that, just kind of developing character stories and weaving them all together, and then of course kind of bringing a cinematic element to what Baron's already put on the page. So.
Thank you. What's your
Very
name?
cool. So
yeah.
Let's get into what is on the page here, because we haven't yet talked about what Dominion is about.
Yeah. Hey, Daniel, do me a favor. If you can kind of mute yourself when we're not talking with you. Thank you. I don't want to kind of over, sensory overload.
Are we getting bad noise here? Let me move here. I'll find a quieter spot.
Okay. So while Daniel does that, basically Dominion, for those of you guys who are not familiar with it, it's a sci fantasy space opera inspired by the book of 1 Samuel in the Bible. So if you are not familiar with that story, it is really kind of like the story of the foundation of the kingdom of Israel, starting with King Saul. That ultimately culminates with the story that everybody knows, which is David and Goliath, and then King David rises to take the throne of Israel. The reason why I started with Saul was because it's a tragedy. I always say that 1 Samuel is Game of Thrones before there was Game of Thrones. And I'm like, when I was looking for a new story to tell, I'm like, it's already there. It's already the intrigue, the war, the the betrayal. I mean, everything that you find that you love in a story like Game of Thrones, or Hamlet in Shakespeare, or even Star Wars, or whatever. The Bible was kind of like the archetypal text for those types of stories.
Yes.
But I put
Saul
it,
was
but I
the
put
king
it, but I put it in space with
Well, yeah, why
lions.
not?
Yeah,
Yeah, Saul was the king who wasn't supposed to be king. I mean, it wasn't a story that they were the Jews cried out, "Give us a king," and God's like, "You don't want a king."
yeah. Saul was. It's a cautionary tale of be careful what you wish for. The Israelite people, they were surrounded by people who had kings. They had a theocratic, kind of a system where you have these prophets and priests and priestesses who represented the will of God and delivered that to the people directly. Whereas they didn't have a king. And so they wanted a king because they wanted to just be like everybody else. So God was like, okay, you want a king, you get a king. And I'll give you the king that you think you want. And he'll be handsome and he'll be powerful and he'll be the whole nine, but he will be very human. And that's what he was. He was very human. He was a narcissist. He was a bad dad. He was a bad husband. He was a bad just leader in general. I mean, I guess you could say he led them to great victories initially. And so that kind of helped grow the kingdom in a lot of ways. But then he kind of got in his own way. And so that story, that tragic story where this one man and his rise and his fall doesn't just encompass his own life, but he takes down his whole family with him for generations. And so I was intrigued by that because I'm like, everybody wants to hear of the positive and happy stories or the triumphant story of David and Goliath and all of that. Nobody wants to hear about Saul because Saul was not that great. But see, that's what attracted me, because there's so many rich layers of understanding of the human condition to learn from someone else's mistakes. And that's exactly why I wanted to do the story. But I wanted to do it in a way that was atypical to a typical biblical story. Everyone does the sandals and the swords and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's been done, right? It's been done over and over and over again, and it will be continuing to be done like that. I said, why don't I take this very same story and put it in space, put it in a galactic empire context? And instead of humans, I go the C.S. Lewis route and use animals or anthropomorphic characters to communicate these very human frailties. And that's really literally a page out of C.S. Lewis's book when he's doing the Chronicles of Narnia, or any other types of stories where he's using animals to really, I mean, speak truth to humanity.
Right. Now, I know you said you've taken away the robes and the sandals and you replaced them with spaceships and laser blasters and things like that.
And mechs, by the way, and gigantic robots. Don't forget that.
Do you retain God?
Yeah, absolutely. We call God in our book the Almighty. And so instead of Elohim, as he would be referred to in the Bible, he's just called the Almighty. And so there is that supernatural element that, yes, in a way, it's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. The Force is just kind of like an unseen power, energy that the people can utilize in certain ways. That is really kind of like the best way to describe the Almighty and dominion. The Almighty is unseen, but you can feel the effects of the Almighty all through. It's like ripples in the water.
I think that's something cool that we're bringing actually to the script too, is a contrast between how the different people relate to God in the story. Saul, and that's something that we're kind of layering in as well as Saul had a time period. He actually reigned for 40 years. He was a king for a long time. I'm sure some of that time he was doing a good job, obviously. And
Hard to
so
screw
some
up
of
the
this
whole
is seeing
time.
him. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he
This
wasn't
is
a
about
total failure.
like the title is called, it's the fall of the house of Saul. So we want to kind of see what it was that he did, that had that downward spiral begin, and how he fell, but also the contrast with David, and so how he may have a different relationship to the Almighty in the story.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're basing this off the story in 1 Samuel. Are you starting with the beginning of 1 Samuel? I mean, is Samuel a character in there, and is there the whole delivery to the temple to be raised by the priests?
Yeah, Samuel is in the book. He's a crow. All of the priests in the I guess you could say the Levitical lineage would be crows. All of the royalty are represented as lions. But yes, we see Samuel at the end of his life. So we don't really get the story of Samuel. We get the story of Saul in pieces. Starting in book 1, chapter 1 is going to be Saul after he. It's the beginning of the end. When you first come into Dominion, chapter 1, it's you can start to see the decline, and then going into chapter 2, you'll get some backstory of how Saul kind of got to be king. And then of course we're kind of connecting the tissue of the further progression towards the story of David as Saul's house declines.
Okay, Dr. Bell, do you have any artwork there that you could screen share and show the audience?
Oh yeah, let's see.
Something else that was cool, Baron, I was thinking about is as reading through the Bible section that we were inspired by for this, and it mentions that the scene that opens up at the first chapter here is the last time that Samuel ever sees Saul before he dies.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
It was actually kind of sad.
Right.
I was reading it. I
was
thinking
sad.
They had a long time, where they knew each other, and then it says, and he never sees him again. And I was like, man, that's rough. And that was kind of a harsh scene, and then he leaves, and that's the last time.
Yeah,
I want to ask, but it's a spoiler. I want to ask if you're going to include the scene where you have Saul go to the medium and conjure up the demon impersonating Samuel.
You know what, Daniel? I'm not really sure. We won't say anything about that. We won't say anything. But I'm trying to figure out how to. Okay, I can screen share like that. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go to our.
The book, but I have
Yep.
Every good tragedy has to have that supernatural element. You got to talk to Shakespeare about that one.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to screen share right now. Let's see if we can do this. Screen share. How do I do this?
I really want the viewers to see this incredible line work that you've been doing with this anthropomorphism.
Okay, screen 2. Okay. I'm not sure if you guys can see this.
It'll come to me first. It's not coming in. There we go. Nope. That's Daniel turning his camera off. Okay. It's coming to me. Just a second. I got to scroll down a little bit to get to it.
Okay, I see it on the screen. So basically, this is our website, terminusmedia.com, and you can kind of see we have like a little trailer that plays on the page that shows a lot of the line artwork and the color. As you can see, our story is very influenced by stories like Dune, Star Wars, of course. Game of Thrones, Robotech, because of the mechs, a lot of different things that are all kind of wound up within the same type of story. But yeah, so you see a lot of the artwork going through the video on the first page. By the way, we have a fan art challenge, so I had to extend it because we had so many people saying, "Oh man, I want to do it, but your deadline is coming up." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll extend it." So, guys, if you are doing the fan art challenge, you have until the 15th of July, and some really good prizes there. So just go to the website and you'll see everything you need to see. Um, the lioness you see right here, this is the queen. Her name is Ahinoam. I know that's a mouthful for some people. I had to say it several times when I first learned her name. It's Ahinoam.
I finally got it.
Yeah, you got it, Daniel.
Yeah.
And so she is the I would say if I could compare her to anybody, it would be like Nefertiti. She is basically the power behind the power, because Saul slowly kind of descends into madness, and she pretty much takes control of Dominion. And behind her, you see the mock-up of the cover for the book, and that's coming out in October the 17th, not October, August the 17th. And see if there's any other
when the book comes out.
August the 17th is when the book comes out. We have a podcast that we do every week that is a production behind the scenes of how we do what we do. We do character profile breakdowns, which we just did this past week, which was the character of Jonathan, how he compares to the actual historical figure in the Bible. Jonathan, we did King Saul last week. We will probably do Ahinoam coming up pretty soon. And, there's not a whole lot of historical data when it comes to some of these characters. So we have to rely upon tertiary sources, extra biblical sources at times to try to figure out who these characters were. And then in a lot of ways, I have a whole lot of leeway with Daniel's help, to develop these characters basically from scratch. There's a lot of holes in the narrative, which lends itself to creative storytelling.
It's kind of cool to think about that too, like where they all were. Obviously, these are real people. They have relationships and perspectives and conflicts between them. That's what we're trying to explore a little bit.
I love when you find holes in a historical record that you're allowed to sort of fill in, and especially with biblical records. I told Dr. Bell I'm a published author myself, and one of the stories that I've been putting on the back burner for a long time is a story about Barabbas.
And nice.
Specifically because he was released from prison. Well, what was he released for? We never get told.
Yeah.
It was obviously a political crime. So I just said, well, he was partners with Dismas and Gestas, and they got, they still got led to the cross while he got led away. And there's a line in one of the Gospels that talks about the resurrection that says, oh, and other people rose from the dead that day too, but we don't talk about them. I'm like, why don't we talk about them? There's other people who came alive.
That is so interesting.
My brother and I were just discussing that verse, actually, the one you mentioned there with the other people raising from the dead, and how little's been talked about there.
This, he's looking for his partners now. Why didn't they come back? And he just goes.
Oh, I love that.
Self-discovery.
I really love that angle. And this is, having opportunities to kind of tell inspired stories by these kind of plot holes. I think it's pretty amazing, and you definitely got to keep me posted on that story. I would be very interested in reading that.
Well, I want to know how it ends too. So,
so I'm showing some characters on the page. We have a whole Dominion page that shows all the characters. This is King Saul in his power armor, which, man, I just loved. Like I said, this is an opportunity for me to just kind of spill my nerdery out on the world. And so I've always loved like mechs and power armor and like Edge of Darkness, Edge of Tomorrow, with Tom Cruise, and they had that armor and all that. So I'm a big fan of that stuff. So of course that's going to be in my books. By the way, Daniel, there you go, Ahinoam.
There we go. Spell it out, right?
Spelled phonetically. So, I have a lot of different character, character sheets, some of the pages. And so you can get an idea of some more of the line work in the book and the characterization of how each character actually is being developed. So yeah, needless to say, I'm having so much fun with this. Prince Jonathan has been kind of like my favorite character to really adapt because I'm taking like these little kind of tidbits of information from the Bible. Like Prince Jonathan is an archer and he, is a warrior and he's all this. So I'm like, well, what would kind of be the equivalent of that would be kind of like a fighter pilot. And so, so I have him and, they would say his armor bearer in the Bible. And I said, well, he's just his co-pilot. So Prince Jonathan, his co-pilot is a fox. And, I don't know why I did a fox. I think I was kind of like subliminally remembering Star Fox from Nintendo 64 back in the day. I'm not sure if you guys remember that. But Star Fox was one of my favorite games to play back in the day. So so I had that. So yeah, he's very regal. I would also compare him to like Paul Atreides in the Story of Dune. He's just a very elegant, very regal character. So,
and you can read,
and one of the most tragic too, I think.
Oh yeah, he. I mean, you think Saul was tragic? Jonathan was kind of wasted potential, which is sad.
This is all. I love the expressions on the expressive faces here. I mean, these are lions, and you're giving them not just human bodies, but human emotional communication, facial communication.
Well, I learned that from the Disney School of Character Design. It's really all about basically using your own face as a template for expressions and emotions. I take a lot of pictures of my face in different states of emotion. And yeah, man, I mean, you go through that, and so you can kind of get some great evocative, emotion. Princess Michael is really my second favorite character because we take her story and we kind of expand it and turn it upside down, because really what we know about Michael historically in the Bible, in the biblical text, is that she was the daughter of Saul and Ahinoam, and she was eventually the wife of David. That's pretty much it. That's all we kind of know. And she did a lot, kind of like behind the scenes, with David throughout the Bible. Some of it positive, some of it negative. The thing that I wanted to do when I started to develop Dominion is really redefine the role of women in the text, and enhance it. And so, because of the fact that the Bible was written at a time when women were seen, in some cases, a little bit better than a piece of property. And in some cases, of course, you see examples of women who actually become leaders in the Bible, yeah. But that's unfortunately few and far between. I really wanted to take Dominion and use the Dominion as the opportunity to enhance some of these characters and build really good narrative around them too. And so instead of Michael being this kind of a pampered princess in the background, she is a unsatisfied individual and wants to do more. So she, against her father's wishes and against her mother's wishes, goes behind their back, commandeers some older generation seraphim armor, which is the same armor that her dad wears, but it's older generation, kind of resting in the motor pool. And she commandeers it, and she goes and she rights wrongs on the frontier. There are areas of Dominion that are lawless to a certain degree because Saul's power is slipping, and Michael and her, she has like a little army that she takes with her to basically go and kind of like a Robin Hood type thing. So she does that in the story, and that's her storyline of development. But she's still elegant, saying she's still beautiful. She's still, she has that kind of an air about her, a regal air. She has the same regal air that her mother has, but she has much more of a youthful vigor, and she's a risk taker. Um,
She has
and
a strong sense of justice and wants to set things right, whereas a mother wants to keep things as they are.
yeah,
Just an interesting thought.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Just see the contrast between them, and the tension that's going to rise out of that relationship is going to be awesome.
Yeah. And then you have the high priest Samuel, like as we were talking about. He's pretty much the same Samuel that you're going to see, that you would read in the Bible. Samuel and the crows, they have this deep reverence for their history and their relationship with the Almighty, and they take their job very, very seriously. Samuel is the moral authority of the Dominion story, at least initially, and he is a creature of absolutes. And so when you first come into Dominion, you will see that he is scolding Saul because Saul was told to destroy this other race of beings called the Amalekites. They were a real nation in the Bible. They were very extremely evil. They killed babies and all sorts of stuff, sacrifice, whatever. And the Almighty says to King Saul, go ahead and just completely destroy them. Completely destroy them. Saul makes the decision. And this is not a spoiler because it is in the Bible. Anyone can read it. Saul makes the decision to mostly destroy them. So he mostly destroys them. He takes all of their best weapons, and he doesn't kill the king of the Amalekites, Agag. In Dominion, that's pretty much where we're first coming in, to where Samuel comes to Saul and says, "Hey man," I'm paraphrasing. "Hey man, I told you that, I thought you did what the Almighty was told you what you needed to do." And Saul was like, "Well, I did. I thought I did, and all of then Samuel was like, "Well, what do I hear in the background? These thrusters of ships landing in the background." And I kind of interpret that from when he was saying in the Bible, the bleating of lambs and sheep, the cattle. In the Dominion galactic context, the value would be in ships and weapons. And so Saul says, "Hey, I took the best of these weapons to give to the Almighty. And there you go." And so Samuel was like, "Well, that's not what he told you to do." So that's Samuel. Samuel is very, like I said, he's by the book.
Yeah, he looks pretty stern there.
He's pretty stern, and that's his one finger saying, "I told you, you should know." And then, of course, these guys weren't necessarily in the biblical text. The Seraphim Marines. This guy would have been represented as the captain of the guard, Abner, but the soldiers were just kind of like background characters in a very big extent. They were just kind of like texture in the background of the Bible. I wanted to elevate them to create a very kind of cool side story with these very cool characters, and I call them the Seraphim Marines. And the Seraphim in the Bible, they are angels who sit at the feet of God, and they're so pure that no one ever really gets to see them unless they're getting preparing to die. So it's like you don't want to see the Seraphim Marines coming at you. The Seraphim, they pilot the other suits of power armor. And basically, like I said, when you see them, it's like death from above. You do not want. Once the Seraphim are called, it's pretty much a wrap. They handle all of the things that the regular Dominion soldiers can't handle, and so that's why you only need 6 of these soldiers, 7 including the king. The king has the 7th Seraphim armor, but you only need 6 of them, and they will handle everything that needs to be handled. And so that's why they're so incredibly cool. And so
something I was thinking about, Baron, too, that might be as we're developing this here too, is the idea of David's mighty men.
Mm-hmm.
Later.
No.
I wonder what that's going to be as because this is going to be the antagonist to the Seraphim in a certain sense.
Yes. You and me, we're right here, Daniel.
I wouldn't mind seeing in that fight.
Daniel, it's in here, and you're going to help bring it out. But yes, that was a part of my plan. Ultimately, I'm building the Seraphim up so much that it's going to be kind of cool to see them. It's going to be kind of like whenever you see like Batman versus Superman, you have 2 really kind of cool protagonists that you built up, and then they fight each other. That's what this is. It's going to eventually be like that. Yeah.
It's an actual civil war, actually.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. So, Seraphim power armor. So, yeah.
When you go to Endor, you can't have cute little fuzzy anthropomorphic teddy bears running around, or Lucasfilm will call you.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have those. Yeah, so that's pretty much, the art of Dominion in general. That's what you can expect to see. Terminusmedia.com.
And we got the link to that in the description below in the video, so we encourage people to click on that. I'm assuming that, I know it's there, I'm just going to make you reiterate it for me, that on that website there's also a link to ordering the book. Have you had much in the way of pre-orders so far?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Kickstarter. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the reason why we're not going the crowdfunding route.
That was exactly what I was going to ask right now, was why you weren't into crowdfunding.
See, man, we're right here. Everybody's in sync. That's awesome. We've done crowdfunding before with Terminus. Terminus is a publishing company that is roughly 16 years old. When I came on to Terminus, I was doing a book called Radio Free America, which is still for sale on terminus.com, terminusmedia.com. That was partially crowdfunded. And that was cool and everything. And, that whole process, I can see the benefit in it. Let me just put it like that. I can see the benefit in crowdfunding. The problem, as we moved forward with Terminus and we started to revamp the business model of Terminus, we made the decision not too long ago to completely change Terminus to be a much more of a family-friendly company, doing either faith-based or family-friendly material, and really kind of reducing our publishing mode to 2 books a year. Dominion is one of those books. We have another book that we're starting to ramp up to pretty soon called Ascension. The reason why crowdfunding was not suitable for our model is because the time you have to put into a crowdfunding campaign for us was not equivalent to the value we can get out of it in our ultimate profit at the end. So you would, in essence, almost be breaking even or even less for the amount of time you put in for what you actually get out of a crowdfunded book. And so for us, time is money too. Time is equity. So we are our small print house. We don't have a ton of people working with us. So our time is valuable. So we were just like, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Instead of having to, oops, what did I just do? Sorry. Instead of having to put so much time into developing a base, doing the crowdfunding, doing all of the legwork behind just making people know and making people aware, and then at the end, we sacrifice a portion of those funds to the crowdfunding platform, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, whatever. You're giving away a portion of your funds because of the service they provide, which is great if you're starting up, but we're not starting up. We're 16 years deep. And so I'm like, well, why give up that money? And why don't we just keep it and do everything that we would be doing for a crowdfunding situation for Kickstarter, but do it on our own website, keep everything in-house, still do the work, still, man, I'm on Instagram daily posting work. We're a very open book when it comes to our process. That's how we get new interest in our project. We basically deal with a one reader at a time model where we respond to every message that comes in, and we cultivate a fan base like that, and that has shown us benefits. We have pre-orders that are almost as much as you would get if you were on a crowdfunding platform. So it's like through our pre-order model, through our own website, we're saving time, we're saving money, we keep control of the process.
All right. Well, fair enough. I mean, as long as you've got engagement with potential customers on Twitter and Instagram and other such places. The only thing I see with crowdfunding, and this gets into the psychology of the people who back something, is that they're constantly seeing that telethon ticker, I call it, going up. And they're like, oh yes, this thing I backed is, it's up to $8,000, it's up to $10,000. It's sort of like rooting for your favorite team and feeling like you had something to do with the touchdown.
And I can see the merits of that. And like, mind you, like I said, we've been through that. You know what I'm saying? On several occasions. The problem is there is no guarantee with crowdfunding.
Right.
And if you don't meet that ticker at a certain point in time, you stand to lose all of the time and all of the effort and all of the work you put into it. At least with Kickstarter. I'm not sure how it is with Indiegogo, but
Indiegogo's different.
Yeah. But my thing is, in our experience, we just said, you know what, we're going to bet on ourselves. And thus far, it's been very, very beneficial for us. So, that's kind of like the model we're going to use moving forward. So we have a nice fan base that we're building. We have a mailing list that keeps expanding every single day. We expand that even more through ancillary projects like our podcast, or we do the fan art challenge, or that's another reason why Daniel's here, is because we are going to be expanding Dominion into an audio drama. And so these are other facets and other areas where we expand our fan base and make it transcend to other different media.
Now, an audio drama intrigues me, especially as it's going to be an adaptation of a comic book rather than a novel. And when you say audio drama, I also get this concept in my head of there are two kinds of audio books I've seen. One where the guy sits there and reads the book and sometimes tries to do a voice for somebody he reads. And then there's this other series, and I can't recall who they are, and I should, because they've done several of the Destroyer novels, none of the ones I've written, but they've done in the past, where it's a full-blown radio play with sound effects and background noises that would be happening in the scene that you're hearing being read at the time or hearing being enacted. What is the plan? And Daniel, this is going to fall into your bailiwick here, I guess. For an audio drama of the comic book, is it going to be purely audio? Is it going to be more like a motion comic, like they did with the Watchmen comic? What's the plan on that?
Well, for the moment, what we're doing is we're kind of developing Dominion as a brand and as a story, and kind of expanding that universe in the area of audio first. And then the visual aspects are hopefully going to be following that. Some of the things we're working on are pretty exciting. But for the moment, the audio drama is not going. It's not going to be like the book on tape, you know, the narration or novelization of it. But the way that I've been producing these types of productions, it's going to be more like a cinematic experience. So a lot of sound effects in the place of narration, things that are going to set the settings for you, the mood, the tone of the story, music, the whole thing. So it'll be like you're going to the movies.
And you can actually hear an example of that because Daniel did this fantastic audio drama on the life of Jesus. Tell them where they can hear that, Daniel, because absolutely we want to promote that.
Definitely. Yeah, you can check it out at BibleActors.com. This is a massive project that we did, 50 voice actors, original score, sound design, the whole thing. Yeah, you can check that out there, but you can also, if you're interested, check out the podcast that Baron mentioned.
Yeah, I think it was
I was on there and they featured some clips. Episode
was it episode 2 or 3? Episode 3.
Episode 3. Yeah, so yeah, I'm on there and we talk about kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff, and there's some clips there that you can check out. But we also have samples and some trailers and such on our website, BibleActors.com, so you can go ahead and check that out there.
I'll add those links to the description.
To get an idea maybe of what, yeah, that's great. And
yeah,
that'll
you're
give you an
episode
idea
3,
kind
Daniel.
of the style. Episode 3? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll give you an idea of the style of what we can do with Dominion. You'll see, you know, the way that we deal with the actors, music, and sound and everything to kind of create a world. So Baron's created an amazing world in the comic panels. Just the scope and scale of it is amazing and incredible. The character design. So we're really looking forward to casting voices for all of these anthropomorphic characters. I've actually got actors coming into the studio on Monday, and we'll be trying out some stuff and seeing what we can come up with for that. And so that'll be pretty exciting to see, you know, what a lion's going to sound like. We got eagle characters. There's a gorilla character. You know, I'm like looking at all these things.
Yeah,
Man, I got some guys in mind for that voice. And a couple of girls are coming in to read for the queen and the princess and the Lieutenant Naomi there. So all of those characters are going to be realized in a very dramatic way, you know, that will expand that comic book panel and kind of the whole universe that's there. So yeah, Samuel too. That's another one. I've actually got an actor who's been bugging me. He's been sending me messages with sample voices for characters based on the posts you're making and on the Dominion.
You know what?
So he's part Moochin.
One thing that he can probably draw on is, you guys remember that movie, The Secret of Nimh?
Yeah, Mrs. Frisbee.
Daniel, remember Secret of Nimh? Nicodemus. Yeah. Somewhere in the back of my mind, that was in my thoughts when I was designing Samuel, and so it's like that kind of type of a character.
A friend of mine said it looked like what was it? Oh goodness, they just redid it. The Dark Crystal.
Dark Crystal, the Earth
Dark Crystal.
Dark Crystal. Samuel looks like it was Dark Crystal inspired there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think a lot of
there's a lot of influences here.
It's in the back of my head, so I mean, it just somehow comes out. So,
right.
but you know, I told Daniel that, you know, my thing is I want Dominion to feel big. That was my main thing. That's why I wanted to feel big on the page. I wanted to feel like it's sweeping in scope and scale. I wanted to feel established, old, ancient in a way, and royal and regal. And so all of that stuff, all of those adjectives go into the look, the feel, the sound, the majesty of Dominion. I mean, you know, and we're doing this we're Christians and we're doing this, and we have kind of like a twofold kind of a method and a twofold mode. Oh, there you go, Daniel. For moving forward with this, we want to entertain. Absolutely. I mean, it's not worth it if people don't like it, and if people aren't excited about it. So we definitely want to entertain, but we're serving God doing this, and so we're doing this at our highest level of creativity. We're doing this with all of our heart and all of our passion because we are really trying to honor the source material. So it's like, and I keep telling Daniel, and I'm like, if we can't get the best, everything, I don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? We'll keep Dominion as a book within my skill set to do the best we can do. But if we can't get the best of everything, I just won't do it. And Daniel understands that. That's the reason why I'm working with him, because when I heard his audio drama, I'm like, okay, I need to work with this person. If I'm going to take Dominion to that next echelon, let's get this dude. He loves the Lord. He's a fantastic theater actor and playwright and just author in general, and a director as well. So yeah, he does everything at the level I need him to do it.
And we just lost him.
Oh, Daniel, come on, man.
You embarrassed him.
I embarrassed him. That's okay. He's used to it.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the book design on here, starting with the key art for this logo. You sent me the logo so that I could try to do something fancy with this trim here and set up the key art. And as soon as I took away the background, I'm like, oh, my goodness, I took away too much here because now I don't have parts of the letters. And I kept going back and forth, but they're not showing up. I didn't notice when I had it at first that they weren't there because the brain is just filling in these missing pieces.
Yeah.
Who designed this Dominion logo here?
That's all me. I mean, like I said, I'm a professor of art and design, so I teach graphic design as well as traditional 2D art, illustration. And so I spent many years just being a graphic designer for freelance purposes. So all of the artwork that you see, as far as the branding, that's really me. The only things that I don't do is color. That's Chris Hunt, and he's like one of the best colorists that you've never heard of. But he's up and coming. And then the ink, which is Hunter Riggs. Hunter is actually a former student of mine at George Fox University, who I saw like massive amounts of potential. So I wanted to kind of give him an opportunity to show us what he could do.
It's all very cool. I'm very happy to see. Now, this first book, is this going to be a series that you have a planned number of issues for, or is it going to be a graphic novel that tells the story beginning to end?
Yeah, our model is that, and this is what Terminus has done in the past, we do 3 books, 3 28-page floppies. Those will then be translated into a trade paperback. So the first book, the first trade paperback is the Story of Saul. So between now and the end of this year, maybe the beginning of next year, we have 3 books that are going to be done in the Dominion series. That will be wrapped up at the maybe beginning of next year. So then we're going to lead that right into the rise of the House of David, which will kind of trace David's whole kind of story with all of those scenes that we've all heard of, but it'll be kind of like it's a adaptation, an inspiration of the story that will be told in the Dominion galactic context. And then, of course, after that, we'll do 3 of those books, and then in 2022, we're going to be doing House Solomon. And then from there, that will wrap up that kind of set, that omnibus of books. After that, I'm not really sure. I'm setting maybe some seeds that could tell some prequel stories or some side stories, maybe stories with just Michael, or just kind of like other different types of storylines within that family context. We're going to stay in the family, in that family for a minute. The David and the house, the David and the Saul family. So that's going to be for a couple of years probably. I'm sorry, say that again.
You could go back and do some of the judges.
Yeah, I've had questions about that. Would you go back? And to tell you the truth, I'm open. It really depends on how well Dominion does. If it does as well as I think it will do, then that will be a nice investment to expand upon the prequel of Dominion. Where did it start? And all of that, and then kind of use these previous biblical characters as inspiration for brand new Dominion characters, and then maybe going forward to I'm not really sure, but we'll really see. I like to pray about things before I do them, and just consult and just look at the numbers. Is it a good business decision to do it? How have we been received? How are the relationships we're developing as a result of what we're publishing? Also, we take into consideration our publishing schedule with the other book as well, and seeing how we're scaling the company based on what we're doing, and then that really helps to inform all of the decisions that we make.
I'm kind of reminded, there's no direct correlation here, but the idea of a space opera based on a Bible story. I'm reminded of Gerald Welch's The Last Witness series, a small press sci-fi series, where it's another planet and it's humans, but it developed parallel to Earth, and it's the Superman story because
interesting.
The young Shiloh gets rocketed to Earth and he's adopted by parents there, but his planet developed along the same lines. God created them when he created Earth, and only on that planet, their parallel to Samson fulfilled his obligations and duties. He didn't fail. And so there was this rise of House of Judges that
interesting.
The boy was a direct lineage from, and he comes to Earth and he's got powers, he's got abilities. Because he's divinely imbued with what God had given to Samson, and it went down the line. Again, it's not
I love that,
but it does remind me, science fiction and Old Testament.
But you know what though? Listen, RJ, the thing is, if you look at Siegel and Schuster Superman, okay, Siegel and Schuster used the Bible as kind of like a template for Superman, because if you look at Moses and Jesus, Moses was a messianic character. Jesus was the messianic character. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like,
the two Jewish boys from Cleveland probably wouldn't have wrote it that way.
They wouldn't have wrote Jesus, but it just happened to kind of fit. And so you see, this is why I'm saying that, there's really nothing new under the sun, because if you look at even George Lucas doing Star Wars, if you look at the character of Luke Skywalker is a messianic character. Anakin was the messianic character that kind of went awry because he was supposed to bring balance to the Force. We didn't know that initially when we first saw Luke, but the story, and then of course Star Wars was the story of David and Goliath. Episode 4 was David and Goliath. You had Luke, who is David, going up against the Death Star, which is Goliath. You hit him with one shot, boom, he's dead. And so the Force, like I said, it's like the Holy Spirit, you know what I'm saying? And if you see, when you first see Ben Kenobi, old man Kenobi, when he's coming out of the wilderness, the first time you see him, you can draw allusions to Elijah with the cloak. You can draw allusions to that crazy man, John the Baptist, because they called him crazy. That crazy old wizard. You know what I'm saying? And so this is nothing new. These are archetypes. These are archetypes that are drawn from well-worn archetypal characters in the Bible.
two of the books that I love to go to for that kind of stuff is H. Michael Brewer's Who Needs a Superhero, which is all about finding virtue, vice, and what's holy in the comics. And
Nice.
then there's Holy Superheroes by Greg Garrett, where he gets into things like the discernment of Daredevil.
Interesting.
He uses comics to teach it. He's a church pastor, and he uses comics in his sermons.
You have to send me the link to those, because those are books I could actually use in my class.
I'll definitely get them out to you. I've interviewed both of the. Well, I've interviewed Mr. Garrett a long time ago. I don't know what he's doing now, but distribution. I haven't touched on that yet, and I do want to get to that. Are you just going to self-distribute, or are you going to list in Diamond? Is this going to be able to make it to stores?
Man, oh man. I don't know what's going on with.
I should say Luna.
I was about to say okay. That's a very interesting question you give me, RJ. Very interesting, because there is a complicated answer to this question. I have a very complicated relationship with Diamond, and I know that I'm not the only one. Let's just say that Diamond put a bad taste in my mouth with my first book, Radio Free America. We were going to go through Diamond to distribute. Then they kind of had some issues with the flow of the book, and they gave me some suggestions as far as how to make it more marketable to the retailers. I was not willing to make those changes, and so we decided to not go that route. I'm not sure what's going on with Diamond anyways these days. Who knows what's going on with them? I mean, but my thing is, we're going to be partially self-distributing, but we're developing relationships with other distribution networks as well.
Yeah, because Diamond's no longer the only game in town.
Yeah.
Luna has come in. Alterna Comics has now got alternate distribution going.
Yeah.
And they're sort of the young bucks in the industry. They're the ones who brought back newsprint comics and sell them for $1.50 instead of $6.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Still in the green room. I'm trying to add him back in here, but my laptop is 6 years old, which is Mesozoic in computer years. So
yeah.
It kind of crashed and it's coming back up. As it comes back up here, I'll throw him back in. So for right now, you're just self-distributing, and
we're self-distributing initially. The pre-orders are going through, and that's like print on demand. It saves us a lot of money, so that we don't have to keep a whole lot of inventory initially, and then we will be setting up other distribution relationships with a larger or more established distributors, so that we can get our books on shelves. However, that's going to look in the era of Corona, I don't know. I think a lot of companies are making decisions based on bookstores' a presence and footprint, and even being able to go to conventions and things of that nature to establish these relationships. It's very difficult in the era of COVID-19. So we're considering all of our options, but we are going to be going for a more traditional distribution route.
Okay. Do you do the convention thing with?
We typically do. We typically have a presence at San Diego Comic-Con, at Dragon Con, at New York.
Big boys.
New York Comic Con. Yeah, no, we have a presence, but this year obviously it's not happening. So I think, like I said, we're in a new era of a new normal, and so we have to figure it out. What is the best places to put our finances and our resources as far as getting exposure for our books. And how do we develop the relationships we need to develop, in this era, in this time? I don't know what the world is going to look like once they have a vaccine for coronavirus. Is everyone going to be gun shy to actually do conventions for another year? Will it be 2 years? I don't know. And so we're all trying to figure out how to make this virtual thing work as best as possible, um, and figure it out. But we are developing other relationships with educational route as well. Schools, because of course we can let this. We have a study guide that we're putting together for multiple different levels. One for more of a middle school level, a high school level, and then even a college level as well. So because I know that as a college professor, books like this you can easily integrate into a syllabus and into a lesson plan for a class like mine.
All right. Well, Dr. Bell, I don't think I have any other questions I can come up with now. I mean, I'd love to sit and talk about your class for a few hours on end,
Yeah.
and find out where your students have gone. I mean, what have they published? Have any gone on to publish things that people would already know about or want to seek out?
Well, not yet. We're it's funny because a lot of my students, they go through my class. Some, very few of them actually stay in the realm of comics because there's not a whole lot of money in comics. So they utilize their skills to translate that into children's literature, or into graphic design work. I have some students who have gone on to do storyboarding for film and television. Some working on for Cartoon Network, for other big, development houses, production houses, and so that's kind of the direction they go after they take my class. Because, like I said, unless you know someone who knows someone in the business, it's very hard to break in on your own. And I've been, I'm a college professor, so I mean, it's like I already, if I'm not writing comic books, I already have a job. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, that's easy for me to do. And with being a college professor, I do have the leeway and the luxury of having a little bit of extra time to work on book publishing, which of course, as a PhD, you kind of have to do anyways. And so, but my students, they don't have that luxury, so they kind of have to do what they have to do to really make ends meet. And so, to tell you the truth, I was talking to a friend of mine in the industry, and I was asking him kind of like, how he kind of makes it work in comics. I'm also working with another comic book artist as well. I'm doing a side project on the life of Frederick Douglass as a graphic novel. And these guys, they work very, 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 very hard. The high level comic book artists, they work extremely hard. Daniel said he has a bad connection, so he wants to thank you for including him.
So do I. I couldn't respond to him because my machine was rebooting.
So unfortunately, when you don't make a lot of money. I mean, you make a decent amount of money, but it's like for the amount of time you have to put in, you really, it's kind of hard to maintain relationships, family relationships. And so because you're pretty much kind of like shackled to your drawing table all day and all night in some cases, depending on your deadline. And so I tell my students, here's the reality of it. Comic books are not as glamorous as they were in the 90s. You're not going to be a millionaire making comics. You're not. You know what I'm saying? I talked to a gentleman over at was it Dark Horse here in Portland, and he's one of the publishers over there. He says the same thing. It's like, I mean, you're not gonna. I mean, you publish a comic partially for the money, but a lot of it is for the prestige, and that's kind of the reality of it. The way you actually do start to break even in comics is creating your own IP, intellectual property, and selling that, and then having that kind of do the work for you. And so that's why Robert Kirkman and other people who are doing it on that level, They just keep cranking out IP, and then selling it.
You're not publishing comic books, you're publishing storyboards for Netflix.
There you go. I've been told that. You know what I'm saying? And so what you do is you take your IP, because me right now I have Radio Free America, that's IP. I have previous book I did back in the day, that's IP. I got the Dominion, that's IP. So what we're doing from the jump is not looking at Dominion as just a book. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. That's not going to make money. What you look at it as, it's IP. So it's like, okay, so what are we going to do to scale Dominion? Dominion itself is a business within a business. How do you scale it? You create multiple revenue streams based on the same IP. And so from the book, you have the audio drama. From the audio drama, you develop animation. From animation, you try to develop ancillary deals for toys or fashion or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And that's when you can say, okay, I'm making money in comics. Comics is just a jump off point, really, to other scalable means.
And you're right. I mean, for every Ethan Van Sciver that's out there, there's 100 others that can't even crack the first $150 of their crowdfund to get their comic off the ground.
Yeah. And I think that here's the problem with that, though. You have to start to change your mindset. Okay. If you're going to do this as a hobby, do it as a hobby. Okay. But you got to know that. You got to understand, okay, this is a hobby. I know I'm not going to make a whole lot of money, and I need to get another job to bring home the bacon and to satisfy my family. If you don't understand it that way, then you're going to lose a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money that you can be putting into something else. If you're going to do it for real as a business, number one, don't build the universe of characters. Do not do that, because it's going to be hard enough to sell one.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to sell one. And you're building a universe of characters that people are not going to ever get to know, because it's like you're selling. I mean, you haven't even sold the first character. Do one good story, one good character, or one kind of character ensemble. Do it really, really well. Make it appealing, make it attractive. You know what I'm saying? Look at other stories out there that are being very successful, and then try to emulate those. And then, if you become successful with that one character, one of those ensemble characters can be your spin-off. Okay? Now you're taking advantage of your IP. And there you go. And then you're building it into other things. But I see, and I've seen this a lot on Kickstarter, on Indiegogo, whatever. You have the new universe of characters. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's even hard. Listen, Valiant, this is why Valiant is having such a hard time. Valiant doesn't have that one definitive character that I can say, that's the character. That's someone I can latch onto. I wish, you know what I'm saying? Right. I want them to have that character. Is it Ninjak? Is it, who is that character that you latch on to? Bloodshot. I mean, they try to make that with Bloodshot, but Bloodshot is such a nebulous character that it's like, that's what I'm saying. You don't have your Superman. And the thing is, and I think that this is what a lot of comic books, a lot of companies make the mistake of. They're wanting, a lot of companies and a lot of storytellers, they make the mistake of going for the titillating kind of action-packed type story that appeals to a very small sliver of an audience. Rated R movies are they do make money. They do make money, but it's a hit and miss thing, man. They don't always make money. You know what I'm saying? If you look at Blumhouse, they make money a lot, but they don't always make money. It depends on what they're putting out. but they're established so they can keep trying and trying and trying and trying. But if you're going for, you know what I'm saying, you want that big hit out of the park, it's probably not going to be your rated R content. You know what I'm saying? It's probably going to be something that's a little bit more family friendly. That's why Terminus had to change his model, because once we changed the model, we started to see an uptick in interest. And that uptick in interest led to an uptick in sales. Because the thing that I've understood, and I did my master's thesis on this, is that family friendly material is lucrative because it engenders repeat viewing.
Yes.
And when you have a kid or a teenager who really, 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 really likes something, they will tell their friends about it. The kids will tell their parents about it. They will want to buy it, and then they will want to consume it over and over and over again, because there's probably not a whole lot of stuff that will appeal to all of the family members, from the kid to dad to granddad to all of them. Everybody can sit down and enjoy together. The more eyeballs you can have on your IP, the more profit you make. And that's the thing. It's like, but when you first come out of the gate and you shoot for the R, you already hamstring yourself because no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. I mean, when you are starting your comic book, and you want to rely upon big buxom women, heroines, number one, come on, dude, wake up. We're in the Me Too era. You know what I'm saying? We're in the Me Too era. You know what I'm saying? I mean, number one, everyone is doing it. Number two, it's objectifying women. So you're already cutting out a portion of your fan base and your market share when you're doing that. It's immature. It's banal. It's beneath a lot of your viewing audience or your readership. Think about that. Look at other companies who are doing what you're trying to do. See if they're successful doing it. And if they're not, do something else. You know what I'm saying? It's really about the bottom line. How are you going to recoup your investment?
Yeah. It's the same thing Napoleon Hill would say in Think and Grow Rich. I mean, all of that boils down to is find somebody who's rich and do what they do.
That is I love Napoleon Hill too, because that's the point, and it's really about, just doing your due diligence, honestly, doing your homework, figuring out what works, what has worked in the past for other people, and then figure it out. Man, Terminus has been at this for 16 years, and for a long time we were doing what other people were doing and it just wasn't working. So in a lot of ways, Terminus had to be reborn. Terminus is a born again company, and guess what? Because of the fact that we are now a more streamlined, you cut away a lot of the stuff that was absorbing all of that capital. You cut it away, and then you put that into two really good, solid stories. And one of the stories is based on a known quantity. That known quantity is the Bible. Guess what? I don't have to tell even an atheist what the Bible is.
Yeah.
That is a potential customer, because you'll like robots. You'll like robots. And hey, listen, I may not be a big fan of the Bible, but I kind of know that story of David and Goliath. I heard it before. So I'm going with a known quantity. I rebrand it. I don't say I elevate it, because how can you elevate the Bible? But you kind of take it to you're inspired. You use inspired content based on a known quantity, and then that's the way you can kind of scale. Because a lot of my audience, they either are Christians, they know the storyline, or they're just big comic book fans who have heard of the story of David and Goliath, or even heard my branding is Star Wars meets Narnia. Somebody knows Star Wars, somebody knows Narnia. You smash them together, you have Dominion. You're building based off of known quantities. Once they start seeing the artwork, they start falling in love with it, because it's not just because it's the Bible, but no, it's because these are cool characters. I want to use the Bible as a springboard And then once the Dominion story gets out there, people will just be in love with the Dominion characters. And then if they want to go back and read the source material, they can.
Sure, and most people. I'm going to say most because I'm sure there's some people on the extremes that are going to say it begins with the B word. I'm not going to touch it. They don't mind that it's based on a biblical story. That kind of thing permeating our comic stories isn't the problem that repels people. It's when you get more along the lines of the preachiness, and that whether I'm not saying biblical preachiness, but things like it could be Jack Chick tracks on one end, or it could be some of the stuff that Marvel is doing with social justice warriors on the other end. It's just as preachy, different philosophy.
No one likes to be preached at. No one likes to be preached at. No one likes to have Christians preaching at them. No one likes to have SJWs preaching at them. No one likes to be preached at. Everyone who goes into a comic book wants to be entertained. Yes. Now, if they get a little bit of education out of it, that's good. But that's not the goal. You know what I'm saying? And I told Daniel this. It's like our goal is to tell a good story. Our goal is to write memorable characters that people can connect with. Like I say in the trailer of Dominion, like Dominion is a story about war and family. That's it. It's about war and family and how the two intersect. And we all can relate to war because we've lived through wars. Maybe some people maybe have directly lived through. We've lived through wars indirectly for years and years, especially post 9/11. We know war. Everyone has had family. Some of us have had narcissistic fathers. You know what I'm saying? That's true. Yeah. And so my thing is, you build these characters in a way that people can say, I recognize that. And then hopefully they want to kind of see how it plays out. And so that's really what it is. It's all about it. So, I was on a podcast with some gentlemen who they're not Christians. And listen, I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to any and everybody as long as you're a comic book fan. If you're a geek, you know what I'm saying, we are already brothers. You know what I'm saying? So I'll talk to anybody about Dominion. You know what I'm saying? Because like I always say, it's a big tent. You know what I'm saying? It's a big tent. Everybody can come on in. Come on in. If you want a good story, you like Game of Thrones, why wouldn't you like Dominion? You know what I'm saying? You like Star Wars, why wouldn't you like Dominion? You like Dune. As a matter of fact, I'm just reading Foundation, Isaac Asimov's Foundation, which is kind of like the template for a lot of this stuff. It's like if you like if you like Foundation, if you like all that stuff, why wouldn't you like Dominion? It's pretty much the same thing. So what? It came from the Bible. I mean, shoot, a lot of source material was inspired by the Bible. So it's like I'm not coming at you, judging you, because I don't want to be judged. I'm not coming at you, preaching at you, because I don't want to be preached at. So it's like if you want a good story, then come on in. Let's sit down and enjoy.
All right. Well, Dr. Bell, I'm not going to keep it any longer. We went an hour and a half here, which is something. That's when I know I've got a good show going on.
Yeah.
We're still talking, and I haven't paid attention to the time. I'm definitely going to put you in my Rolodex here as someone to get a hold of when the topic of creating comics comes around here. Because now I have a professor in my back pocket that can. You do.
I'm here for you. I'm here. I can talk about this stuff all day. I love it.
I'd really like to, talk with you sometime about what you teach on how to create compelling stories, and what writers, well, not by name, but what writers in the market today could probably stand to sit through your class.
I don't want to get myself in trouble, so I'm not going to say anybody. I'll just say that even myself can stand to sit through my class, because I don't have the corner on the market of knowledge. I'm always learning. That's why it's so good that a person like Daniel came into my atmosphere, because he's teaching me some stuff too. So it's like pretty awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We do appreciate you, and I will get you to those books in the DMs as soon as we're out of the show.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hi. Thanks for stopping by for another Critical Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is one of the times where I should have just clicked on the end broadcast button and oh, it finally came up. All right, we are out. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.